Okay, the last suborder of rodents that we need to deal with in this lab is the Myomorpha, suborder Myomorpha. For short, you could call them the mouse-like and rat-like rodents, although that's a little inaccurate. But the Myomorpha as a group, and this is a very speciose, this is the most speciose of the 5 suborders in the Rodentia. There are many species, especially in 1 or 2 families that we're going to get to. But when we're talking about the Myomorpha, there's a few things that we need to remember. Let me see if I can stand this card up here. Okay, yeah, that'll do it. The Myomorpha, the infraorbital canal, and is again what we're going to look at. And there are 2 superfamilies in this group. And if you go to page 106 in your lab manual, oops, page 106. Put a little jumping mouse in here to hold us in place for a moment. You'll see that there are 2 superfamilies, the Dipodoidea and the Muroidea. And so these are the two superfamilies. The Dipodoidea has jumping mice, and there's one right here just below this card, the western jumping mice. Jerboas, birch mice, and other species. And the infraorbital foramen, or canal in this case, in the Dipodoidea is large and it's oval in shape. And they also have a narrow zygomatic plate. And I thought I had a skull for a Zapus here somewhere, but I think I've misplaced it. This is a rat skull. By contrast, the muroids, Muroidea, these are the family Muridae and the family Chrysetidae. The infraorbital canal in all of those species is V-shaped, usually, with the broad part of the V dorsally. And also the zygomatic plate is broad and tilted upward. So we're going to take a look at a number of these. We've got 14, I think 14 species here. 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, yeah, 14 different species from 3 different families that we're going to look at. And the first of which is the family Dipodidae, okay? This family is more widely distributed in the Old World, in Eurasia, and but we do have the western jumping mouse here. And this is a jumping species, a saltatorial species, not quite to the extent. Zapus princeps is the species name, a name again that you need to know. And this species is common in meadows in the western United States, up in the Sierra Nevada. And it's a beautiful animal, and at least in life it's a beautiful animal. It's kind of gold on the sides, and then you've got a distinct line in the fur there between dark fur on top and this golden color on the side, and then strongly bicolored on the belly. And they have large hind feet and a very long tail. So you can see the length of the tail in this species here. So if you look at the fur, try not to confuse it with the pocket mouse you saw earlier in an earlier video, especially the California pocket mouse. This is the California pocket mouse, which has external fur-lined cheek pouches, but notice that the pocket mouse doesn't have that difference in coloration that the jumping mouse does, with the dark fur on top, the golden lighter color fur on the side, and so on. So the pocket mouse is quite different. And relatively speaking, the tail is longer in Zapus. See, this is a smaller Zapus species here with a very long tail, whereas the Chaetodipus here has a fairly long tail, but it's only a little longer than the body length, whereas with Zapus it is much longer than the body length. Okay, so that's Zapus princeps in the family Dipodidae, and again the scientific name Zapus princeps. I thought I had a skull, but I cannot. Oh yeah, here it is. Here's the skull. Let me show you the skull here for Zapus. Let's see if we can see this. Okay, now. Okay, let's see. I need to zoom in here. So you can see here that it has fairly large infraorbital foramina. I know it's hard for you to see it in this, but relative to the other myomorph rodents, they have this large oval shaped, if I put a card behind it, it will help. See, now you can see it. On the right side, see that large oval infraorbital foramen. Okay, I'll try to get a better close-up photo of this for you to look at. So that is in the superfamily Dipodoidea. The only family that we have for that superfamily is the Dipodidae. Okay. Now on to the rest of the Myomorpha. The first family we're going to look at is the Muridae, very speciose family, the family Muridae. I need to adjust the magnification back down here. So here's the family Muridae, and we're only going to look at two species from the family Muridae. If you refer to your handout, we'll look at the house mouse and the roof rat or black rat. So first we'll look at the house mouse, Mus musculus. This is a typical mouse that you have that is commensal with humans. It doesn't have strong bicoloration on the belly. You see the belly is kind of gray and it's brownish dark on top. They can vary a bit in color. Ears are typically not very big, and little rat-like snout on them. The tail length is not very long. It's about equal to or less than the body length. And this is the animal that I became a mammologist with. My dad was a primary school headmaster in Ireland when I was a small boy, and they had wooden floorboards, and the mice used to come with wooden floorboards. So I offered to my father that I would trap them for him, so I had a few snap traps, and I kept a little notebook of all the house mice that I killed. And I've forgotten how many I killed, but it was some 2-week period. And so that's Mus musculus, one of the most widely successful animals in the world in terms of its distribution. And you saw the Life of Mammals video where it's featured again. So for the family Muridae, we're only dealing with the house mouse. And the other species that is commensal with humans, Rattus rattus. Say that fast and with a little emphasis, Rattus rattus. And this species has caused a lot of trouble for humans, the black rat, both in terms of disease transmission, but also in depredations on food supplies and stuff like that. And it could be called the black rat if its fur is darker than this specimen. This one is brown. But they're also commonly around here known as roof rats because they can get into attics and roofs of homes. And but they're also common in nature. These animals are very common along the San Joaquin River and major tributaries of the San Joaquin River. They're excellent climbers. They have a high reproductive rate. They're omnivores, as you can tell when we take a look at their teeth. Let me try and turn this around here. So they've got multi-tuberculate teeth, kind of like our teeth, multicuspate, and so they're not like vegetation eaters like the next group that we're going to look at that have flat occlusal surfaces. Another very distinctive feature with these animals is their tail. They have a long, very long tail, and it's scaly. Let's see if we can zoom in here so you can see that. Okay, let's see here. Okay, now I think you can see the scales and the tail. It's a fairly naked tail, unlike the wood rats, which we'll be looking at shortly. And it's scaly. There's the hind feet. So this animal is an incredibly good opportunist. And in nature, they can climb trees, they can be on the ground, they can get into birds' nests and take nestlings or take eggs. They're very successful animals, the black rat or roof rat. And you'll also be familiar, I'm sure, with sewer rats. Sewer rats are typically found in cities, and again, that's an exotic species from the old world. It's also called the Norway rat, Rattus norvegicus. It's a different species. And actually, there's a third species of Rattus established in the Bay Area now. I've forgotten the name of that, the scientific name of that species, but it came to the Bay Area on, we presume, on ships, and it is from Asia. Okay, that's the Muridae. The next group we're going to look at is the family Chrysetidae. And the Chrysetids are a very, very speciose family, and there are a number of subfamilies involved. In this lab, we're just going to look at two subfamilies, and they're indicated in your handout. The first of which is the Arvicolinae. The Arvicolinae, and these are the voles, the lemmings. These are vegetation eaters. These are through and through herbivores. So the meadow mice, they're also called meadow mice. Voles are often called mice, but they're in the rest of the world they're mostly called voles. And the other subfamily we're going to look at here is the Neotominae, and these are the wood rats and the deer mice and related species. So first we're going to look at two voles and the muskrat in the Arvicolinae, and then we're going to look at two wood rats and 6 mouse-like critters, as we call them, in the Neotominae. So 6 mice and 2 wood rats in the Neotominae. But first we're going to look at the Arvicolinae. And the first species that we're going to deal with here is the common California vole. Okay, and this is the animal we're talking about here, Microtus californicus. Okay, and if you look at this animal, this is basically like, to a lot of wildlife, this is like going to a fast food place, like going to McDonald's or going to In-N-Out and getting your double-double or whatever, because so many animals feed on these terrestrial predators, aerial predators, and they can reach high densities in grassland. So this is Microtus californicus, and they can get fairly big. So there's good eating in one of these for an animal. Even wolves in northern North America feed on voles and lemmings when they're abundant, because it's such an easy food supply. Just catch enough of them and you're full. Now there is another species of vole that we're addressing as well, and it's called Microtus longicauda. Tongue-tied here. Longicaudus. And you can tell from that species name, Longicaudus, that it refers to something being long. Longi is long, and this is tail end in Latin. So they have long tails, okay? And you might think, well, that doesn't look that long. But for voles, it is pretty long. And let's overlap them on the card here so you can see. That's the Microtus longicaudus. Now, that's a smaller specimen than the California vole we have here. And here's the Let me get that tag out of the way. So we got the two butt ends together. Remember, the Microtus californicus is a bigger specimen, but look at the tail is longer, significantly longer in that much smaller Microtus longicaudus. So that's one way you can tell those two apart. The other way to tell voles apart from other species of other mouse-like creatures is a quick look at their teeth. Now you may already be able to see it with this lower jaw, but we'll see it on the upper jaw too if we turn it around. Turn the two of these around and put them side by side. And I'm going to try to zoom in on these. And I want you to, oh man. Sorry about that. It surprised me as much as it did you. Trying to get my tripod steady here without it falling apart. Okay, so I'm zooming in on the teeth, especially on the upper jaw. Let's take a look here. Look at those sharp edges, those little angular edges on the molars there, on the cheek teeth. They're not all molars, there's a premolar and 3 molars there. That's what you call prismatic. Those are prismatic crowns. They're hypsodont teeth. You need to look, I'll be sending you a handout on some of these different dental terms. That means they're high crowned and they're ever growing, so they keep replacing the tooth from the bottom because these teeth are grinding off each other all the time to grind up vegetation. So it's called prismatic, or an easier term to remember is Christmas tree. Now, if you look in the lab manual, it talks more about this, but these arvicoline rodents, voles, lemmings, the muskrat, they all have this type of teeth. See this Christmas tree-like structure? And when you look at them, look down on them on the upper surface of the lower jaw, and you can see that structure. So prismatic or Christmas tree-like. And you only see that in the arvicolinae. Now, while we're looking at skulls, let's take a look at the muskrat skull. The muskrat is the biggest member of the arvicolinae. And let's take a look at that. And this is the muskrat skull. Muskrat is much, much bigger. Remember, I showed it in the previous video. This is a large rodent, but here you can really see the structure of those teeth. This is prismatic dentition, or prismatic occlusal surface. You can see it really clearly there on the upper jaw of muskrat, Ondatra zebeticus, which is the next species we're going to look at. Let's take a look at the lower jaw as well. And there you see the lower jaw. Again, that prismatic arrangement, the Christmas tree-like arrangement is pretty obvious there in the lower jaw of a muskrat. So let's take a look at the full-size adult muskrat. And here you can see the muskrat is very large. It's got a laterally compressed tail from side to side. This is it looking down on the top, and then from side to side you see it's flattened, so it uses this in locomotion. The other thing it uses in locomotion are stiff hairs on the hind feet. The feet are not webbed like some species, but they do have hairs on the surrounding the toes. It'd be better now if I turn them upside down here. So here you can see all those that fringe of stiff hairs around each digit. So they act like the flippers that you would act if you were doing snorkeling. So these are highly aquatic and very good in water. And again, the species is, let me zoom out here if I can get my, okay, so here you see the species name, Ondatra zebeticus. So that's the third member of the arvicolinae. The third member of the Arvicolini subfamily of the Chrysetidae. Remember we said there's the family Chrysetidae and the subfamily Arvicolini, and we looked at 3 species that vary considerably in size, from the 2 Microtus species to the very large muskrat. Muskrat's about the size of a mountain beaver, but mountain beavers don't have a tail like that, and mountain beavers they live along streams and so on, but they're not a really aquatic species. Okay, the second subfamily and the last group of rodents that we're going to look at are the Neotominae. And for those, we're going to look at 2 native wood rats. And wood rats are distinctive in a number of ways. And one of the things that they're famous for is they build stick houses. Okay, wood rats are herbivores. So if you look at the skull of a wood rat, this is the skull of a desert wood rat right here. You'll see that their teeth are, in some respects, bear some similarity to the Arvicolian rodents that we just looked at. Okay, it's not quite grinding surfaces on the wood rats. Wood rats, though, are a bit more omnivorous than Arvicolians. Arvicolians, for the most part, eat green vegetation, whereas wood rats and other neotomians are omnivory and eat things like seeds and fruit and so on. So here you've got the desert wood rat and the dusky-footed wood rat, Neotoma fuscipes. Fuscipes means dusky, dark foot. Pes is foot. And then there's Neotoma lepida, the desert wood rat. Both of these are distinctive because they build stick houses for their protection from the elements and from predators, and these houses can be considerable. In the desert, Neotoma lepida will make those houses from even cactus joints and have little runways protected by cactus as well. But Neotoma, the desert wood rats actually extend up the west side of the valley from Southern California to Del Puerto Canyon on the west side of the valley, but you'll find them in rocky habitat on the west side of the valley. By contrast, Neotoma fuscipes is associated with oaks, live oaks in particular, but also they love valley oaks. It's kind of like lettuce to them, and they will climb up into trees at night. So although they nest terrestrially, sometimes they can nest in arboreally, but mostly they'll build terrestrial stick houses, but at night then, these are nocturnal species. They're going to climb high into the trees at night to feed and grab vegetation. And they're nocturnal. They don't want to be picked off by predators during the day. Sometimes after a wet night, where it's pouring rain in California as we have in winter, you'll see these dusky-footed wood rats will come out on a branch to try to dry off if the house got a little damp. And they'll be sitting in the sun trying to warm up and dry off a bit. And if you see a hawk carrying a wood rat, it's usually in the morning, it's usually after a wet night or a cold wet night or whatever, and they're out trying to thermoregulate a bit better, and they get nailed by a red-tailed hawk or a red-shouldered hawk or some other raptor. They get hunted, of course, by various other species, terrestrial species like snakes and cats, gray foxes, and a variety of other things, but they also get hunted by owls at night as well. So they're different from the ratus that we just looked at in a number of ways. The fur is different. They have denser, softer fur. They mostly have big ears. Let's see, we're looking face on here onto a dusky-footed wood rat, and the big ears, like Mickey Mouse ears, like as you'll see in the pica, a lagomorph later. Also, this one gets its name from a duskiness on the hind feet. So here you can see some of that duskiness on this specimen here. This darker fur, and you see it on the other side as well. So they've white feet, but they'll have dusky pelage coming down on the dorsal surface of the feet. So those are the two wood rats that are shown. There are a number of other wood rats in California, but we're only going to deal with two here. In the Sierra, for example, there's a bigger one called the bushy-tailed wood rat, and it literally has a bushy tail. Okay, now the last group of rodents we're going to look at within the Rodentia in general, but within the Chrysetidae and subfamily Neotominae, we've got three genera here: Peromyscus, Rythrodontomes, which is a harvest mice. Peromyscus are deer mice and related animals. And also this thing that looks like a Peromyscus, but is actually a pretty incredible little carnivore called the grasshopper mouse, Onychomys torridus. And we'll talk about that one last. But first I'm going to talk about the Peromyscus. Now, I don't expect you to be able to tell these apart for the most part from just looking from online, because you really need to be able to sit with the specimens and examine them. But let's talk about the four Peromyscus species first. The first one that we're looking at here, the most common, perhaps the most common native mammal in North America, is the common deer mouse. And it has an analog in Europe called the Apodemus sylvaticus, again convergent evolution, but Apodemus sylvaticus is a murid species, where this is a chrysetid. And you'll see they have moderately large ears. They're very different from a house mouse. They have bicolored body, white on the bottom and then yellowish brown on the dorsal surface. You look at the tail is not very long in Peromyscus maniculatus. The tail is generally shorter than the body length, or about the length of the body. The next species of Peromyscus that we're going to look at is one that's called the pinion mouse. And this is Peromyscus trui. And right away you notice its ears are much bigger than you saw in the Peromyscus maniculatus. Also, the tail is longer. It's usually a little longer than the body. There are other characteristics as well, but they're too difficult to show you online. But again, it's a similar deer mouse body plan. The next animal we're going to look at is similar to Peromyscus trui. This is Peromyscus boylii, and this one is called the brush mouse. And their ears are you can't tell on this species, but their ears are very large, or large too, just like the trui, the pinion mouse. Again, they're bicolored, but in this case, the tail is longer. And you can see that on these two species here. The boylii is maybe a little bigger than the trui, but look at the tails. The tail of the boylii is quite a bit longer than the trui's tail. And the last one, Peromyscus, we're going to look at is a true, well, I was going to say a monster, but this is anything but a monster. This is an amazing animal. Look at those big ears. This is Peromyscus californicus, and it's called a parasitic mouse, but I'm not a big fan of this name, Peromyscus californicus. Look at the length of its tail, real long tail. And this animal is distinctive in a number of ways, and ways I want you to remember. It is a monogamous species, and that's really rare in mammals in general and in rodents in particular. And it's called a parasitic mouse because it often lives in the houses of wood rats, especially dusky-footed wood rats. Dusky-footed wood rats' houses are large conical structures made from branches and twigs, and they can last for 20, 30 years in multiple generations of the California mouse is said to, quote, parasitize the houses. But these are big structures, and they're probably more commensals than anything. They don't have any, well, they may have positive benefits for the wood rat. Maybe they help to keep an eye out for predators or alarm or something like that. But it's not known that they have any negative impact on the wood rat. So again, I'm not very thrilled with that name, parasitic mouse. And the last Peromyscus-like animal want to show you here, this small one, is not a permiscus at all. This is Rodontia megalotis. This is the harvest mouse. Okay, and it looks kind of like a permiscus, but it's got reddish fur on the ears. The tail is a little longer than you see in Permiscus maniculatus. The ears are not very big, bicolored bodies and so on. And they live in fields and meadows, and that's why they're known as harvest mice. They're often entered during harvest time, and they can reach, you know, reasonably high densities in fields from that perspective. One really distinctive feature about them, which I might be able to show you in a photograph later, is that the upper incisors have grooved. So if you find a small skull and you examine it with a little eyepiece or something, and you see a groove going down the middle of the incisor, you know that, okay, it's not a Chaetodipus or a pocket mouse. It's not a deer mouse. It's a harvest mouse. Okay, the very last rodent we're going to look at is this amazing little animal called the grasshopper mouse. It's actually the southern grasshopper mouse, Onychomys torridus. And okay, you look at this and you say, oh, it looks just like, kind of like a permiscus with fluffed up fur. And the fur is a bit different from a permiscus. The ears are a little bigger too. But the thing that's really distinctive about them is the tail. The tail is short. Tail is kind of short, fat tail, about half the length of the body. And these animals are not granivores and omnivores like all the other permiscus that we talked about. These guys are out and out little killers. These guys are carnivores, and they feed a lot on insects, invertebrates like grasshoppers, beetles that are out at night. They'll kill scorpions too. You might have seen some video of them doing that. And they'll even take other vertebrates if they find them dead or injured. They will, other mice and so on. And mammalogists working in the desert in the past that used to use snap traps to collect specimens sometimes would come along and find the brains were eaten out of a specimen that they had killed and trapped, but they hadn't picked up yet. And the reason the brains were gone was these little guys. These Onychomys torridus would come along, and they would dine on the trapped rodent that was there. So these are amazing. They also are very interesting from a behavioral perspective because they're like little coyotes. They'll stand up on their hind feet and they'll vocalize to indicate their territory, but their vocalization is not like a coyote call. It's more like a very high-pitched whistle. Some people can't hear it at all. I don't know if I could hear it anymore because my hearing has deteriorated a bit, but in the past, working in the desert, I could easily hear this at night, and you'd know that these little guys are around, and they are really amazing. Okay, that is all I have to say about the Myomorpha, the fifth and last of the Rodentia suborders that we're talking about. And I hope you found these videos useful.